We're here to talk about your personal experience, your life. Um, yeah, I did have like a few like question that I asked you before. You said you were from Bangladesh, right?
Yep, that's right. That's right.
And you're living right now in New York. Sorry, in America.
I'm in Canada. Yeah,
Ah, Canada. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry. And how is it? Like, how was your life in Bangladesh? Like,
It was so. My parents' financial situation kind of evolved as I grew up. We started very, I don't know, middle class to lower middle class, I'd say. But then now that I'm moved out, now they're like upper middle class. So I didn't get to enjoy much of that really. But we were always okay. We were never poor. We were financially, we were always okay. I feel very fortunate. Um, and oddly, my parents are very unique. They had a unique parenting style, which is not very prevalent in Bangladesh, which is they're very liberal, secular, minded people. Because yeah, like openly feminist, openly like fighting for LGBTQ rights. They were
wow.
very, very progressive people, which is very rare in Bangladesh. And because of how progressive they are, in like a Muslim majority country, conservative Muslim majority country, they've gotten a lot of shit over the years. They've everything from like just contentious conversations with family members to actual death threats, and the whole spectrum of ugliness.
From family members,
The
death
death
threats?
threat part? No, the death threat part is from strangers. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because that's a new layer of horrible. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so they were, and that was before you were born even? That was like,
No, like while I was, I don't know, I want to say when I was a teenager and stuff. And they still, because of my father's profession, and he's very open about like fighting for women's rights or fighting for LGBTQ people's rights, fighting for poor people's rights, fighting for religious minorities' rights. And people don't like that. Like most conservative Muslim like people don't like hearing about women at all. Fuck like women's rights. They just don't like hearing about women. So
yeah, go to the kitchen.
it's yeah, yeah, yeah. Just yeah, we barely exist in their minds. We exist to just like pump out children. But yeah, so because he's a public figure and he's openly supportive of those causes, we've gotten a lot of shit over the years.
But from the government, how is the government in Bangladesh? Like, is it supportive or is it like, because if he's able
Yeah.
to speak like, publicly and say stuff like that, I imagine it's
No, it's actually it's getting so I don't want to get into the like legal like nooks and
general.
crannies of Bangladesh, but in a nutshell, the government of Bangladesh is it's complicated. They started out as the party that's in power now. They started out as the more progressive party, but you know how power corrupts people, how power corrupts governments. In the Middle East, it's so common.
Sure.
People start out as progressive parties and then they become like just awful, ultra right wing, like just nightmares.
Yep.
Yeah, that is essentially the course it's taking in Bangladesh now, because now they'll shake hands with every conservative leader, every very controversial imams who've said awful things about women, awful things about gay people. They'll shake hands with them just because to gain that voter base, to gain
Hmm.
that conservative Muslim voter base. They will shake hands with anybody for
I'm not sure if it was Plato or Aristotle, but I heard one of them. It's like parts of my philosophy class, like just shining through. I remember from college, and I remember one of them said against the idea of total democracy. He wasn't against democracy, but he said that democracy should be uh, chosen. I mean, not chosen by the idea of everyone can be voted. Like not everyone can be a politician, or not everyone can be can vote. Now, I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I am saying that what he said is interesting. He said, when you have two people, you have one, a candy salesman who sells you candy. He will tell
Mhm.
you how great it is, how wonderful it is. He can lie to you, but he's selling you, even if he's not lying, he's selling you kind of happiness, like something good, even if it rottens your teeth. From the other side, you have a doctor who will tell you, listen, you have a problem. Listen, you have this and that, and you need to do something. You need to work.
Mhm.
We need to do something to work about it, and you need to do the same. Which one of those people would you elect? Like somebody that tells you facts and gives you a proper ideas of how to better yourself, better
Yeah.
your body, or somebody who sells you candy. So there, I think this is the problem where we get to our politics in the world right now. We are having candy salesmen telling us, look how shiny it is, look how beautiful it is. We don't have people are saying, I have an idea how is nobody is saying the hard truth right now. I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah, and you can't if you're trying to please like a mass population, if you're trying to please a bunch of people, you cannot just spit out hard truths because it's hard to swallow and people are just going to shun you. They're not going to listen to you anymore. That's why like in colloquial conversations when someone's being too diplomatic or someone's being too tactful, we say, oh, you're acting like a politician, as an insult, because they're not having like an honest conversation. They're just like going around the bush, because that's how politicians have to talk. That is the business. That is what the job is.
But if you're speaking not like a politician and you're saying stuff out of, not tactful, like I'm used to say sometimes, then they will attack you like people have attacked me, especially in college. Not woke enough, let's just say, like not being woke
Yeah.
enough. And people are getting so triggered, so especially it's not like I'm saying that young people are worse, but I'm saying that young people are getting triggered more easily nowadays that older people are. I feel like like a we have weaponized words way more than before. Like right now, words are like if I say something to somebody, it's worse than attacking somebody. That's what I
Yeah.
feel, right?
Mhm. No, I fully agree with you. And I say this as someone who's Gen Z and as someone who's like pretty like I lean pretty left politically. Yeah. But like what we've done and my version of leaning left is a very Bangladeshi leaning left, which is our left is like, oh, we want to give people like proper incomes, we want to raise the minimum wage, like just like salt of the earth issues, like things that are like basic necessities, because it's a poor country and we still have to care about basic necessities. We don't have the time to like have bullshit conversations about what words are offensive. We just don't have the time for that because we actually want to give like basic human rights to people. That is what our like primary objectives are. And when I came to Canada, people asked me, oh, did you have a culture shock? I didn't, but something that shook me was the how the definitions of liberal, conservative, left-leaning, right-leaning, how they change in the West. Because when I came here, what I noticed was, oh, one of the first things that struck me. This is actually a very apt example of what you were talking about. So there's a huge homelessness problem in Canada,
A
and
what?
but you
A
know how we've
homeless.
dealt with one of the issues that like the woke liberal crowd discusses is, oh, you shouldn't call them homeless people, you should call them unhoused people. Like, who cares? Give them houses, give them homes. I don't If I'm homeless, I don't give a flying fuck what the fuck you call me. Give me a house, give me somewhere to live.
Unbelievable.
Unhoused.
Unbelievable. I mean, this is like this is some new levels of bullshit I've heard. I
Yeah,
never
like
heard of
who
that.
cares? If you don't have a place to live, if you're living on the street, do you care what people are calling you? No, you want somewhere to live. You just want shelter. But that's not the thing we're devoting like our time to. We're devoting our time to, oh, what terminology to use, as if that matters.
I mean, you just said when we were talking before, like before the interview, you said the thing about I found very interesting about when people are accusing you of Islamophobia and the
Mhm.
idea of that term. And I I totally agree with you, but like when you say anti-Semitism or racism, you have an idea of the people. You are looking at the people.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But when you're saying Islamophobia, you're saying, you see the book, you see the
Yeah. Yeah.
Quran,
Yeah.
you say like,
Yeah.
don't speak about the Quran. And we know that people have, like in countries, in Muslim countries, you have how do you call it? Uh infidel rules, not infidel rules,
Oh yeah, blasphemy rules, or yeah,
blasphemy
yeah.
rules.
Well,
Yeah.
blasphemy
So
rules. Yeah.
so yeah, this is kind of like one of those things that right now in England they're trying to erase um the definition of Islamophobia, the Muslim
Mhm.
majority, because they're trying to blur the lines between being critical of Muslims and being critical of Islam.
Mhm.
And I think that they're trying to show that being critical of Islam is being critical of Muslim. And yeah.
You know what the objective is, right? Like, it's just, if you can't, okay, I don't know where to begin with this thought. Here's my thought. Like, this is something I said to you over the text too. I hate that term Islamophobia because it sounds like one thing, but it's actually talking about something else. It sounds like, oh, like etymologically, is phobia means an irrational fear of something, and then Islamophobia would mean an irrational fear of Islam. And there are two problems with that. One, people use that word to describe like anti-Muslim or anti-Arab bigotry. Anti-Muslim or anti-Arab bigotry is like a hatred towards a group of people versus like a fear or distrust of Islam, which is an ideology. Those are two very different things. A hatred towards a group of people and an ideology, very very different things. One, I would argue there is merit in like having a conversation about, no, you should not just blatantly like hate all Muslims, hate all Arabs. Absolutely not, that's a horrible thing to do. But like, and also the irrational fear part of it, the phobia, it describes an irrational fear. This is not me, someone recently told me this actually. Is it irrational to be afraid of Islam? Because you know how I became an atheist actually? Because I grew up pretty liberal Muslim, I would say, like a loosely Muslim, culturally Muslim, whatever you want to call it. I became an atheist the day I read the Quran in English, the day I read the Quran with meaning. The day I finished reading, I'm like, oh, I don't agree with this. Like,
Wow.
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So wait, before that you were reading it in Bangladesh, like in
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do
I was in Bangladesh. I was in Bangladesh, and my family, my immediate family was never religious. Like I said, my parents were not really religious, but my extended family, some of them are very religious, and I grew up in a Muslim majority country, so almost everyone around me was religious. Even like young children in school, like they would talk to me about Islam too. Like my friends would, because they were hearing that constantly at home. And it's kind of weird for like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds to discuss religion in school. It's kind of strange. But anyway, I grew up around that. So I considered myself, I believed in God, I believed in Allah, I believed in like, I considered myself a Muslim. But then when I was a little older and I got social media, um, people would post things like, oh, they accuse Muslims of terrorism or Muslims of like sexism, but it's actually a very progressive religion if you read the Quran. So I was like, oh, that's great. I'll read the Quran. It's a very progressive religion. I'll read it, and then I will understand my religion better. And I would also be able to argue these kinds of arguments, like, oh, my religion is actually a very peaceful religion, the West is villainizing us or whatever. I would be able to argue that was my intention. Literally, that was my intention going into it. That I will be able to prove that Islam is a progressive religion by reading the Quran. But then I read it, and it's not progressive. It's, yeah, that's how what made me an atheist. So I honestly advocate for more people, more Muslims to just read the Quran, like read it. Actually read it and see if you intrinsically truly agree with the stuff that it says about women, about queer people, about Jewish people, about like people who worship idols, about idol worshippers, about like basically anyone who's not like a Muslim male. Anything it says about someone who's not a Muslim male, see if you agree with that stuff, because chances are you won't.
I heard a lot of people trying to justify the Quran by telling, no, no, you don't understand. Look, there's a phrase here that says, if you kill one person, it's like you kill the whole world, right? Something like that.
Yes.
And then I heard somebody say, well, there is a reason why you read the Quran from start to finish, because it's a you are reading a journey of a man who is like Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad. You're reading a journey of a man, and he's writing it from the start when he was, he didn't have a lot of followers, he didn't have a lot of people. He was trying to get more people, and in the middle, when he was starting to get a little bit more followers, and he would start to be a little bit more militant, then you would see that when he had a quarrel with the Jews, he would call them pigs and monkeys and sons of bitches and whatever. And little by little, you can see that he's just being, militant. It's like the whole idea is he's trying to spread by the sword the
Yeah.
Quran and the word.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the biggest issues I have with Islam as a religion, because you can say whatever you want to say about Judaism. I'm agnostic. I don't care. There's a lot of stuff you can say about, having slaves,
Mm.
there's rules for having slaves. There's rules for killing somebody. How do you kill? If you pillage or you don't pillage, stuff like that. It's an old book. It's a very,
Yeah.
very old book. But we don't have one guy that we are following there. Like, no one prophet. We have multiple people, multiple prophets, and none of them are even in the Tanakh itself, the Bible itself. None of them are perfect. None of them
Mhm.
are perceived as perfect, and none of them are magic wielding people. Like, no
Yeah.
superheroes are in the Bible. If somebody makes uh, um, something like Moses did with the water and everything, it was
Mm.
only because God gave him that power. So when you take somebody and you put him in the top of the chain, top of the food chain, and you say he's higher than anybody else, like even
Mhm.
Jesus, it's the same idea with Jesus. But Jesus himself, even if he's like the Son of God or God himself, doesn't really matter. He was never advocating or killing people by himself. And you know that Muhammad did kill people. So
Mhm.
when you see somebody that he is a religious prophet, a religious person, being hailed as the last word of God, advocating for killing people who are not going with the vibe of your religion, then that gives the readers the idea that it's it's acceptable. You need to kill
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing people
Mhm.
that are excusing terrorist attack. We're seeing people excusing, being a murder, a shaheed,
Oh
the
yeah, a martyr. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
martyr. Yeah, the whole idea that when I'm reading right now about the whole war in Gaza and in Israel, and and my heart breaks. My heart breaks, but it breaks a second time when I hear mothers calling their sons and daughters, especially sons, they're calling them shaheed, they're calling them martyrs, and they're saying, and it breaks my heart because I feel like, I don't know, I feel like they saying that this is the whole purpose in life, to die. And this is, for me, it's a horrible way of thinking, not just living, just thinking.
Yeah.
To think that your child is supposed to be a weapon. And there was just a few days ago an audio from a Gazan in Rafah when an Israeli soldier calls him and says, "Listen, we are coming in. We need you and your family to get out." There was like 60 people there, and he said, "We're not going anywhere. If you want to bomb us, bomb us." You're saying, "Listen, you have kids. You have for them, save them." He said, "My kids, what do you care about my kids? We're going to die as shaheeds. We're going to show the world how horrible you people are." This is not a game. This is not, this is this whole idea of we're going to show people, other people. And again, I'm not saying that the whole people of Gaza are saying that because it's not true. But just the idea that some of people of Gaza believe that dying is the answer, it breaks my fucking heart.
It reminds me of, this is not exactly related, but this what you're talking about, the psychology of this life doesn't matter. There's like, because the reason, a part of the reason this is the thinking is that this life is just momentary. This life doesn't matter. What matters is what happens after death. What matters is the afterlife. That is the prevailing wisdom. And it reminds me of something I had, like a very contentious, very public debate with someone once on social media about uh, like the merits of Sharia law. Like, someone was arguing for Sharia law, and I was like, "Have you seen what it does to countries? Several countries." And his argument was like, "Oh, but those countries aren't following Sharia correctly. And they would do it. They should do it my way." I'm like, "Who made you the expert?" Anyway, that's a whole other concept. But one of the things that I have a problem with in Sharia law is slavery, is that it allows slavery, and I don't think that is good. Like, call me crazy, I'm against slavery. And
You're not old
his
school.
I'm so old school, like so controversial. I'm against slavery. And his response to that was, uh, aren't we all slaves in one way or another? Aren't we all like corporate slaves? I mean, are you really gonna argue that corporate slavery and chattel slavery are the same fucking thing? Are you kidding me? Like, you hate your 9 to 5 job, so you're gonna compare yourself to slaves who were picking cotton, or running around like building pyramids? Like, are you joking right but and I think then he said something like, "Oh, but we're all slaves of Allah in the end, and I take pride in being a slave of Allah." That is so, we're not even talking about the same thing, but that is their psychology. Like, that is the psychology that is indoctrinated into young children, that nothing matters in this life. All that matters is the afterlife. Like, you're taught to see yourself as so worthless, so worthless. Like, that is how you're taught to see yourself from when you're a young child. And you know what that does, in my opinion, is it makes it easier to indoctrinate you further. It makes it easier to feed more propaganda into you. It makes it easier to make you do things you may not necessarily want to do. If you're constantly told, "Oh, your life doesn't matter, your life doesn't matter."
Did you
Yeah.
see that kind of way of thinking in Bangladesh, like from your
Yeah.
friends from school? And
Yeah. uh yes, like overall yes, but that was more, yeah, definitely, that like, "Oh, this life doesn't matter, only the afterlife matters." But I think one of the issues I have with it is, this is the only life that we know for sure that we have. Nobody knows what happens after you die, but this is the only life that we know for sure. We're living it. We know for sure this one exists. And the way you're taught not to care about this life, the way you're taught like not to wear the things you want to wear, do the things you want to do, say the things you want to say, the way it restricts your life to like mold you into a particular shape so that you can be happier in the afterlife that may or may not exist, is I think it's so damaging to people. And this is gonna make me sound like a complete fucking hippie, but we only live once, like that we know of. Maybe there's an afterlife. Like nobody knows what happens after death because you can't know that scientifically. It's just not possible to experiment with that. But this one we know for sure we have, and the way that Islam teaches us, and most like organized religions, the way they teach you this one doesn't matter. Why?
That's interesting. I totally agree with you. We have the same problem with extreme Orthodox Jews that think that, I need to pray all day. I need to do whatever to do. I need to pray all day to speak with God. This life doesn't matter. It's just like the bridge to the afterlife. And I'm saying, even if it's true, even if you're right, let's
Mhm.
go on a limb and say you are 100% right. Why not make the best of it right now as well?
Yeah. And I wouldn't even have a problem with people not wanting to live their own lives. Where it becomes a like problem for me is they go out and propagate that bullshit. Like they go out and like tell other people you can't do this with your life because my religion doesn't allow it. Like your religion, you do you, man. You want to like lock yourself in a house, lock yourself in your kitchen, go for it. Whatever you want to do. Just don't tell other people, including your children. Like that is something, it's complicated territory. I understand why parents want and in some ways need religious freedom to teach your own children what you believe in. I think like it's a complicated question, right? But when you're teaching young children, like I remember uh when I was a child, they were teaching us about things like hellfire, like what the myriad of ways Satan will fry your ass if you lie about something, if you cheat on a test or whatever.
At
And
school?
yeah, not at school, by like my like older cousins and like my
Mm.
aunts and uncles and other religious people in my family, and also in school to some extent. But I went to a private school, so I had less of that. But even in my school there was a little bit of it. Like, should like 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds be learning about hellfire? Like, maybe not. Like, is there a reason to traumatize children that way? I don't think so. I remember there's this page I follow on Instagram called Ex-Muslims of North America, and they posted a picture once a few years ago of a book, an Arabic book about like how to teach children about Jahannam, about hell. I'm like, do you need to teach children about Jahannam? There are so many better things to teach children. But yeah, that's something. It's complicated territory. How much parents should be allowed to pass on their religious beliefs to children? There's no real answer to it, and I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert. But I do think with an ideology as violent as Islam, I think we should exercise caution. Even if you're devoutly Muslim, I think you should exercise caution about how much of it you want to expose your children to at an early age, at least. When they're a little bit older and they can read for themselves, they can understand difficult concepts by themselves, sure. But when they're young and they're depending on your guidance, I don't think you should teach them that men should be able to beat their wives. I don't think you should teach young children that.